Imagine watching a loved one put through agony and being utterly helpless to stop it. What lengths would you fall to just to get revenge? That's exactly the question Chris finds himself faced with when he steps on a landmine, allowing a deranged man to take Chris and his lover hostage in his own sick games. It's a fight for control between three people, but even their tormentor will discover that this is a game nobody can win. We open on a scenic Eastern European countryside as three American friends make their way through Georgia. When Daniel gets out of the Jeep to relieve himself, his fiancée Alicia and best man Chris debate whether to tell them about a previous affair between the two of them. They reach no resolution, but this conversation will ultimately seal their fates. The three later arrive in a lush field once a war zone during the Russo-Georgian invasion. After hiking to a gorgeous clifftop view, Daniel asks Chris to officiate his marriage with Alicia. Although they have a future ceremony planned, he wants to take their vows right here and now. But in the middle of their marriage rites, Chris leaves complaining that he feels like a third wheel. That night, Daniel assures Chris that he'll always be a part of their lives, toasting to his best friend. As he and Alicia head to their tent, Chris finishes the marriage rites and tells Daniel to kiss the bride. They begin consummating their marriage with the tent flap open as Chris puts out the fire. The next morning, Chris finds a man going through their stuff and confronts him, assuming he's a thief. However, this turns out to be Devi, a friend that Daniel and Alicia met through their work with the Red Cross. Chris and Devi shake hands in forgiveness, and Devi agrees to take a group photo of the three. He asks them to step to the side to get a better angle when he hears an ominous click. Devi tells Chris not to move as Daniel discovers that Chris has stepped on an old mine left over from the war. Devi tells Chris to stand still while he leaves to get help. But could Chris have been right not to trust Devi all along? Daniel tells Alicia to get behind a nearby rock while he assures Chris everything will be okay. Devi, meanwhile, retreats to a nearby mound and watches them through his binoculars. When Daniel sees he's got a signal, he calls for help. He tells Alicia there's an explosives expert on standby, but they won't send him because they don't help cheaters. The whole ordeal is revealed to be a setup organized after Chris told Daniel about the affair behind Alicia's back. Daniel retrieves a shovel he's planted in the woods and tells Alicia to dig a trench so that Chris can jump into it, hopefully dodging the explosion as he releases pressure from the mine. Chris tries to call Daniel's bluff, saying that Daniel wouldn't have stood next to an armed mine if there was a chance Chris could set it off. Daniel agrees, only to then pull the safety pin and arm the mine. Alicia hugs Daniel, trying to make him see reason, but Daniel throws the pin into the woods and hikes off, telling Alicia to start digging. Chris and Alicia fearfully try to think of a way out of their situation, but the real terror's only about to begin. Daniel meets up with Devi, who helped him plan the whole thing. He wants to leave immediately, but Devi thinks they should wait an hour and then offer to help. Daniel wins Devi over by promising him food and drink, and they head out. With a smoke signal lit to draw help, Alicia finds the safety pin. Chris gives her his knife so she can remove the pin from its chain. She tries to insert the pin into the mine, but she can't get it all the way. It's too risky to step off the mine without waiting for assistance, so she decides she needs to dig. Before long, local hunter Ilya and his dog Biba stumble upon the scene. Chris and Alicia call them over for help. Biba runs straight for Chris, but Alicia scares him back. Ilya points his gun at Alicia, scared that she's trying to hurt his dog. Seeing the hole she's digging, he accuses them of trying to hide a body and fires at the ground. Alicia tries to calmly explain the situation, drawing Ilya's attention to the mine. When she asks for help digging the trench, he laughs at their plan but asks her for the shovel. Yet, he doesn't dig, and Alicia hopes giving him some water might persuade him. When she goes to get it, Ilya throws a rock at Chris. Alicia asks if he's crazy, and he threateningly grabs her arm, saying he was only testing to see if the threat was real or if they were playing a prank. He eventually lets her go, but threatens to leave until Alicia tells him about the affair and Daniel's revenge plan. Ilya finally agrees to help, but he's going to want something in return. He first looks through their bag and takes Alicia's underwear, but decides he wants the ones she's wearing. Chris tries to bribe him with cash and credit cards, but he's not interested. When he threatens to push Chris off the mine, Chris decides to take his chances on the safety pin so Alicia won't have to give in to Ilya's demands. But there's one problem. Alicia still has the pin. It wouldn't even go in partially, and she lied to calm Chris down. With no other choice, she removes her underwear and gives it to Ilya. In return, he makes a show of digging, although it's clear he isn't actually doing anything. When a radio sounds from Ilya's bag, they realize he could have called for help at any time. They ask to use the radio, but first Ilya wants Alicia to play fetch with her own underwear. She walks over and grabs them, but Ilya isn't satisfied until she retrieves them with her mouth like a dog. He gives her the radio to call his friend Sergey. However, Sergey doesn't speak English, and Ilya is only willing to translate if Alicia strips for him. She throws the radio at him, telling him to just leave as she starts digging again. Unfortunately, he won't be leaving for quite some time. When his radio goes off again, Ilya says Sergey is worried about him. Alicia loses patience and tries to hit Ilya with the shovel, but he grabs it and forces Alicia to tell Sergey not to worry. Except Sergey still can't understand her. Ilya won't let her go until Sergey understands, which means he'll have to translate. And that means Alicia will have to undress. He makes a game of it, forcing Alicia to start undressing while he gives faulty translations in response. Alicia finally wins the game by having him translate that he's on his way back to Sergey's. She removes her shirt to fulfill her end of the bargain and tells Ilya the game is over. Ilya admires Alicia's clever play, grabbing his bag, and begins to leave as Alicia sobs in despair. But Ilya soon returns and orders Alicia to continue undressing at gunpoint. Chris distracts Ilya and tells Alicia to run. Ilya sends Biba after her, dropping his gun as he gives chase himself. Chris uses the chain from the safety pin to grab the gun as Ilya returns with Alicia at knife point. Chris threatens Ilya with the gun, but he says the shot has a wide spread. If Chris fires at Ilya, he'll harm Alicia as well. Ilya cuts Alicia's cheek and forces Chris to insult her before dragging her to the nearby rock, where he brutally forces himself on her while Chris watches helplessly. Ilya eventually finishes, but the nightmare isn't quite over yet. Alicia manages to grab Ilya's knife, and Chris tells her to run for it. But when Biba pounces on Chris, he accidentally fires the gun at Alicia as he falls into the trench. The mine does not go off. After putting Alicia's body in the trench with Chris, Ilya explains that he knew the mine was a fake all along. A real mine would have gone off as soon as Chris stepped on it. Chris sobs and cries for help, but it's too late. Alicia is gone. Sometime later, Tanya hears someone outside her house and finds Chris seemingly over his horrific ordeal. He says he's lost and asks for a map, so Tanya's daughter Lika offers to print one out for him. It's quickly revealed that these are Ilya's wife and daughter. They invite Chris in, where Lika gives Chris a map and invites him to stay for lunch. Ilya finishes up his work and chains Biba outside as he approaches the house, completely unsuspecting. When he enters, Chris stares him down with a smile. They pretend not to know each other, but Lika and Tanya can sense the tension between them. Ilya allows Chris to eat, walking him out when he finishes. Neither of them will be prepared for what's to follow. Ilya and Chris agree to meet down the road in 1 hour, and Ilya watches as Chris leaves in his car. He runs to unchain Biba and orders him to guard the gate. As the clock ticks away, Ilya eats lunch with his family. When they ask what happened with Chris, he says it's none of their business. He gets up and goes to the window before staring at the religious artwork on his mantle. He considers calling the police, but how could he possibly explain the situation? Suddenly, Biba begins barking outside before abruptly falling silent. There's no sign of him through the window, so Ilya runs outside to check. Meanwhile, Chris comes to the door and tells Tanya and Lika that Biba ran in front of his car. When Ilya sees Biba's blood in the driveway, he runs back to the house. Seeing Biba wounded, he runs to grab his gun, but finds his ammunition missing. Chris confronts him, revealing a pistol and shooting Ilya in the knees. He orders Tanya and Lika to help Ilya inside, where he instructs Tanya to sit across the room while Lika binds her hands and feet. He then reveals that he's stolen a pair of Lika's underwear. Ilya sees where this is going and tries to tell Chris that he'd been drinking when he attacked Alicia, but that he doesn't drink anymore. Chris decided it's only fair for him to take a drink himself, but that won't numb the shock he's about to experience. Chris forces Tanya and Lika to drink as well before pouring the rest on Ilya's open wounds. He then begins removing Tanya's underwear, threatening to shoot her if she doesn't hand them over. After making her play fetch like a dog, Chris shoves the underwear in Ilya's mouth and begins to tell Tanya and Lika why he's seeking revenge. Ilya tries to protest, but Chris threatens Lika until Ilya puts the underwear back in his mouth. He tells them about Alicia's fate, revealing that he found Ilya's wallet as he searched for help and used it to track him down. After taking another drink, Chris tells Lika they're going to play a game. He removes every bullet except one. For every article of clothing Lika removes, he'll pull the trigger. If she survives until she's fully undressed, she wins. Ilya tries to crawl forward to save his daughter, but he's in too much pain. To show he's serious, Chris pulls the trigger on Lika. The chamber is thankfully empty, but he threatens to fire again if Ilya keeps moving. He tells Lika to remove her dress, pulling the trigger when she refuses. She finally lowers her dress and removes her shirt. Chris fires again, this time on a loaded chamber. Chris is shocked, backing against the wall as he stares in horror at what he's done. As he listens to Tanya and Ilya's off-screen sobs of grief, trying to figure out where he could possibly go from here, one last shot of the fake landmine reminds us how utterly pointless all of this violence has been. Click the videos on screen right now.